The more movies I watch, the more I notice my taste is starting to change. With some exceptions, I no longer enjoy comic book movies, movies with graphic violence, or sequels nearly as much as I used to. Logan is all three of those things, and yet, I fucking love this movie. I've seen it like 8 times, and when I watch it alone, it still makes me cry.
Like a bitch.
By the way, I'm gonna spoil the fuck out of this movie, so you've been warned. This movie resonates with me so well because it evokes genuine, completely earned emotion, and it does that by telling a deeply personal and focused story. It's not distracted by trying to set up the rest of a franchise. As the title would suggest, the movie is all about Logan, Logan's internal struggle, his relationship with death, the curse of eternal life. This is a man who's basically immortal, but completely dead inside. He's not some kind of celestial being who's meant to be alive for thousands of years. Besides his mutation, he's basically a regular dude who's been alive way longer than normal people should be. This movie takes place in 2029, and this man fought in the fucking Civil War. He's almost 200 years old, and most of those years were spent fighting in wars, being tortured, experimented on, and watching the people closest to him die, sometimes by his hand. At this point, you can't really blame him for craving death, now can you? The smart thing this movie does is it kind of gives him his wish in the most grueling way possible by having the adamantium in his body slowly poison him. Problem solved, I guess? But that's a pretty damn torturous way to go, so just in case, he carries around an adamantium bullet with him. Hey Logan, why do you carry around that adamantium bullet with you?
I was thinking of shooting myself with it.
Damn.
That's fucking metal as fuck, dude.
Now, of course, my attachment to the character from previous films plays a role here. I can't deny that. But it's not just Wolverine dying that gets to me. That's not what makes this movie good. He could have died in a different X-Men movie and it wouldn't be the same. I mean, after all, the Wolverine, the movie, not the guy, explores the same theme and takes away his healing factor. But if it happened there, it wouldn't be nearly as impactful. His death works so well in Logan because they tell a story in which he's supposed to die. It's the only outcome that makes sense and it's handled beautifully. Now, this is not the shit on the Wolverine, because for the most part, I enjoyed that movie. But I think comparing these two films really highlights the fact that it's not just about your idea, it's about how you execute that idea. The Wolverine is a nice little precursor to what James Mangold really wanted to do with Logan. That's where the idea of his immortality being a curse is introduced to us. Now, Logan executes this idea brilliantly by giving us relentless reminders of that fact. The Wolverine executes this idea in a different way, by frying it in the electric chair with a dry sponge on its head.
Sponge is dry.
See, the Wolverine simply flirts with the idea, sees it in the club, and it's like, damn girl, you looking... Damn. Logan takes the idea by the hand, nuts up, and fully commits to it. Death and dread are present in every goddamn frame. Logan dying is inevitable here. I honestly can't imagine someone watching the Wolverine and really thinking he was gonna die, especially now with Days of Future Past coming out the next year. And aside from the Jean Grey nightmare sequences, which are very good, I have to admit, I don't feel the full weight of his immortality being a curse. That thought really only enters my mind because this dude just straight up says it.
Eternity can be a curse.
The theme is used more as a plot device here to add some flavor to a pretty standard narrative. Logan makes it the entire narrative. There's a dark cloud hanging over his head at every fucking moment. It is addressed later on, but we don't need to be told this. We can feel it with every step he takes, every wound that doesn't heal right, every time one of his claws gets whiskey dick because he's a fucking alcoholic. Every time he coughs or does anything, we know that he just wants it all to be over. Logan's storytelling makes a promise to the audience, builds it up the entire way through, and actually delivers on that promise, giving us proper catharsis by the end. The Wolverine starts off promising enough, but by the end it peters out and falls back into action movie tropes like having the final battle end in a cheesy ass one-liner.
You asked me to come say goodbye. Sayonara.
Now, I know Wolverine's a sarcastic character who cracks a bunch of jokes, some of which are fantastic.
The country needs you. I'm Canadian.
I know you, Logan! I know who you are!
And even the Wolverine has some clever moments that perfectly suit the character, like when he shoves this respectable businessman into a pool.
How did you know there's a pool down there?
I didn't.
And I don't even think that Sayonara line is that bad, but for a movie that so clearly wants to be different, seems to have no problem ending off like every other action movie ever made, because apparently it's against the law to not have your hero shoot the bad guy and be like, have a blast. Or, hey Santa, what do you get that shotgun for? Ho ho ho, to spread the joy, bitch! Or some stupid shit like that. This is what happens with big franchises. The director has a vision, but somewhere along the way they're hit with a bunch of restrictions and that vision gets neutered. Logan is a great example of what can happen when those restrictions are stripped away.
Fuck off, Logan.
Simply put, by the end of Logan, I was sitting up, glued to the screen, with tears in my eyes, ready to cry like a little bitch. By the end of the Wolverine, I was picking my teeth, scratching my balls, and waiting for it to be over. I know I gave it some shit, But I do enjoy The Wolverine, mostly because it paved the way for Logan to be a great sequel by substantially building on his predecessor while standing alone on its own merit. It's able to avoid the pitfalls that plague so many mainstream franchises. There's an overwhelming amount of movies out there that are just unnecessary continuations, only serving to set up future unnecessary continuations, perpetuating an endless cycle of cookie-cutter cotton candy fluff with little to no artistic or narrative value. Sure, there are some great sequels out there, but for every Godfather Part 2, there's a Godfather Part 3. For every Skyfall or Shrek 2, there are like 10 fucking Rambo 7s. What, you think they're actually gonna stop at Last Blood? Yeah, right. See, what I think studios can learn from Logan is how to properly balance between having to navigate the current Hollywood landscape while still creating a genuinely distinct and worthwhile experience. Logan tells a complete story, bringing an end to Wolverine's journey with no distractions. It also turned out to be pretty successful, so if anyone wants to move forward with a sequel or spin-off, following Laura's character is a pretty obvious way forward. But her primary function here is to serve Logan's story. She wasn't shoved in here so we could have an X-23 franchise in 5 years. Her presence is vital to this movie. She's the only glimmer of hope in a sea of despair. But before that can shine through, just like Charles and nearly every other character in this movie, she's a haunting reminder of just how fucked up Logan's life has been. I mean, she was literally created using his DNA and has spent most of her life in captivity as a lab rat, something Logan understands all too well. And then we see just how dangerous and powerful Charles has become through these visceral seizure sequences, and then they just casually mention in passing that he's responsible for the X-Men dying. Yeah, no big deal, just the only people Logan's ever had a meaningful connection with, all gone. So now whenever he looks at Charles, he's probably thinking about all his dead friends. But Charles can't remember that, and he's not gonna tell him that shit, so he just has to grin and bear it. Well, mostly just bear it. Dude doesn't really smile much, which is fair. The whole point of a movie like this is to put us in the shoes of the main character, make us feel what they feel. That dread and torture that Logan feels is gut-wrenching, and every aspect of this film is in service of that mood. The music is somber, the writing is bleak, the actors fully commit to their beaten down characters. The lighting may be gorgeous, but it's usually dark and gloomy, and all these areas gel and coalesce in such a coherent unit, so even when we get these breathtaking daytime sunlight shots, that dark and gloomy feeling pervades every scene. Even the violence, if you don't want to see claws inside of people, look away for a bit. Even the violence informs the story. It is brutal and exhausting. Maybe a bit excessive at times, but that's their reality. Logan especially is tired of having to fight all the time. He just wants to escape on a boat with his friend, or just fucking die already. But before that can happen, he has to help out his stolen DNA daughter. And on that journey, they meet this family. This poor fucking family who just wanted to return a favor and treat them to a nice dinner. And at that dinner, we finally get the briefest glimpse of a genuinely happy moment. Logan even smiles at something besides tits. And the movie's like, hey, don't forget about that dark cloud. And sure enough, the next time we almost get a nice moment, unbeknownst to us, Logan's evil clone shadow looms over the entire scene, waiting to rip our hearts out and kill Charles. No, I'm not crying already. I just did a bunch of cocaine. Now obviously X-24 is there to give fans what they wanted with R-rated Wolverine, but even this comic booky bullshit adds emotional weight to the story. Logan feels like he hurts anyone he cares about, or really anyone who gets near him, and this is a physical manifestation of that. And he's not really wrong to feel that way. The movie continually proves him right. This family gets slaughtered because they were unfortunate enough to cross paths with him. Caliban kills himself to get out of a shitty situation he's only in for trying to help him. Even the 70 Mart, wow, clever name, employee has something bad happen to him. And the last remnant of the period of his life with any actual meaning just got impaled by his literal clone. At this point, I'm praying they just let him die already. Put this man out of his misery, please. And no matter how they killed Logan, I probably would have cried. Full disclosure, I already started crying a bit here.
It's got water.
But the way they handle it is damn near perfect to me. It's such an emotionally rich arc. He spends his whole movie wanting to die and watching those around him suffer. His body is shutting down, and well, we discussed this. It's bad. The only reason he keeps going is because Laura somehow managed to get under his skin and decaying metal and draw the last bit of empathy that he could muster. So by the end, when she's in trouble, he comes in like a man possessed and lays down his life to save her. Everything comes full circle here. The object of his intended suicide is now useless to him, but it's what allows her to walk away unscathed. And as they say their goodbyes, a flood of emotions is bursting, but it's not just Charles dying or Laura crying or the catharsis of Logan finally getting that relief he's been searching for.
This is what it feels like.
I mean, it is all that, but what really drives it home for me is what that relief now means. It's no longer the bitter, apathetic acceptance of death that he's been carrying around for so long. Because of Laura, it's transformed into something poetic and meaningful. He sacrifices himself so these kids can have a shot at escaping the same misery, grief, and torture that destroyed him. He can now die with true acceptance because for a brief instant, he got to care about something and feel alive again. In his final moments, he did something good for someone else. And that's fucking beautiful, man.